in the number of times that I've had an interaction with Lars Ulrich in my 30 years of being a professional drummer, he's been nothing but absolutely cordial and a beautiful person to me. And every time, always took time out for me, always just hang out, never a rock star, never a jerk. So I'm always pro Lars. So
hello and welcome back to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City where we explore the history and people of Troy, New York, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, John Salka. This is Chapter 11, Episode 16. I love heavy metal. It's been the soundtrack to my life since I was 16 years old, so you can imagine how excited I am to finally drop this episode on the world. We're back this month with our second episode looking at major concerts in the Collar City. Today, we're jumping into Metallica's first and only performance in Troy, New York at the RPI Field House on March 15th, 1989. I've been gearing up for this episode since the podcast launched in January 2024, and we landed a very special guest, world-renowned drummer and lifelong Capital Region resident Jason Bittner. Best known for his work with Shadows Fall and, more recently, Category 7, along with stints in Anthrax and Overkill, along with his early years in local Capital Region heavies Stigmata. Our conversation with Jason goes deep not only on the Metallica show at RPI, which he was at, but also on the countless major rock and metal bands who've crushed the Capital Region over the decades, including Iron Maiden, Megadeth, Overkill, and Anthrax. Please note this episode has a lot of swearing, so just a fair warning for anyone out there listening with kids around. You'll also be hearing audio from Metallica's performance at the Fieldhouse that night to help us tell the story. Shadows Fall has an amazing new single, In the Gray, which is out now, and Category 7's self-titled debut record is also available everywhere. So, if you're into heavy music, I definitely recommend you take a listen. Alright, less talk, more rock. Time to get into our conversation with Jason Bittner on Metallica's 1989 concert in Troy, New York. RPI Field House, 1989. What was happening in your life at the time, young Jason Bittner?
young Jason Bittner was home on spring break from Berkley. I was extremely excited that I was going to get a chance to go, that Metallica was going to be there that week, because oddly enough, I already had tickets with all my friends to see them in Providence, Rhode Island the following week when I was going to be back at school. So my mission on spring break was to go home and find out how good the Metallica show was so I could tell all my friends. And I went back to school. Oh, when I saw them at home, they were better. It was better show than this one. Wrong. Sorry, I can't say that. It was the exact opposite.
Oh, really? The Providence show was a better show.
They crushed in Providence and they fucking sucked. They sucked in Troy compared to Providence. Well, at least that's what the 19-year-old me remembers. And at that point, that was really no drinking at a concert, because I was usually driving or something. I didn't really start, really drinking until I turned legal drinking age anyways. I was 21. So what I'm getting at is I was sober. There was no booze to make me go, they were great. And no, stone cold sober, wasn't smoking weed like at shows really then, not like now, but daily minute usage. But my point is, I was pretty clear focused at back in the day to when I would go and see my favorite bands, because of course, as a drummer, I wanted to hear every single note played. And if Lars didn't do it, my friends were going to hear about it, sadly. What I can remember the most about that show was being extremely pissed off, because at the beginning of the night, because I was convinced that we were going to miss Queensryche, because I kept telling my stupid friends that we were going up too late. Part of the reason, again, knowing that I was stone cold sober, is because they wanted to sit in the car and drink because they didn't really care about Queensryche. I'm like, mind crime, want to go see the show, thank you. And it was still, and it was more, well, what do you care? You're gonna go see it with your Berkley buddies next week and probably, yeah, but I also paid for it to go see it right here again on this night too. So what I do remember was getting in pretty much right before the lights went down, the intro went off for Queensryche.
This is audio of Queensryche performing live at the RPI Field House in Troy, New York, opening for Metallica in 1989.
And I just thought they were great. I thought they were better than Metallica that night. That specific night. And for me, I feel terrible saying this because I just got a message from Lars. I just got a message from Lars from one of my bandmates a couple of weeks ago, sending me my best, and he hadn't seen me in a long time, and he wanted to tell me he said hello. But I am not the first person to say this, that we all know that Lars, even though we all know and love him, was not the most technically proficient technician night after night, let's say, on the drums. So let's just say that the 1989 version of myself thought that Lars might have had a couple too many beers before he hit the stage that night, because I didn't hear all my favorite double bass parts being played in the mix. Of course, the mix might have sucked anyways. I don't know. It was still Metallica. He was still on the gray and black drum set that, oddly enough, I'm really emulating right here with my new kit. That was not done on purpose, but as I looked over, I'm like, yeah, that's yeah. Wonder where I saw that before.
It's funny how your influences probably continue to come back to, now you're friends with Lars, as you're just saying. He's just sending you an email, and you've got you're able to kind of self-reference back.
I'll always defend Lars because, people have given him so much shit over the years. Yeah, whatever, sloppy, hasn't done, it's been documented a million times before. All I can say is in the number of times that I've had an interaction with Lars Ulrich in my 30 years of being a professional drummer, he's been nothing but absolutely cordial and a beautiful person to me. And every time, always took time out for me, always just hang out, never a rock star, never a jerk. So I'll always I'm always pro Lars. So. But I do remember it being a great show. I mean, it was the Justice Tour. I mean, come on, that list was great. That was still, their best album, albeit no bass on the record, but whatever. And Karma's a bitch because then coming to be in Flotsam and Jetsam myself and hearing some of the Jason Newsted stories, and also touring with the man myself when I was in Shadows Fall when he played in Voivod on Ozfest 2003. Not a very nice man. Not a very nice man at all. So I kind of don't feel bad that they left his bass off in Justice for All. And if you read Rex from Pantera's book, he says in that book that they ran into Metallica and they told the Pantera guys straight up that they did it as a joke. That's pretty cold. But whatever. I'm digressing off the subject. The show was great. I also do remember that they did not play Bread Fan because I did rub it on my friends' faces back home here when I saw it the next week in Providence.
So I didn't look at the set lists too closely, the subsequent shows leading up and the ones after. So there was a change. It wasn't like they were just playing the same set list every night.
No, it was the same set list, but the encore, I think what it was like the encore was sometimes, some nights it was 3 songs, some nights it was 2. So I think it was just one of those things where Bread Fan just wasn't included in RPI. And the only reason I knew that, or I was familiar with that song, is I think it was the backside to the heart, to the oh God, was it Harvester of Sorrow? Or I think it was the backside to the Harvester of Sorrow cassette single. Or it might have been the backside to the Shortest Straw. I don't remember, but I like the song, and I knew they were. Rumor had it back then that they're playing that song live, but you didn't have setlist.com to look it up and find out before you go to the show, like I do nowadays. So I make sure I know where I can make my escape.
It's funny you say that, and relative to the set list, but also to the video itself, and we I know we talked about it just before we started recording, but that the video of the show exists. So there's this permanent memorialization of the concert from some guy or some girl with a camcorder who schlepped it into the field house.
And I still wonder how the hell did people get that? Though, I mean, we're not talking about this here. We're talking.
I'm younger than you, but I'm old enough to know what a camcorder is.
You're not gonna hide this.
Yeah, and that's not the only RPI Fieldhouse show that is filmed its entirety, and we're going to get to the Slayer, obviously. But Iron Maiden, both of the Iron Maiden shows at RPI Fieldhouse are filmed. There's a bunch of shows
Somewhere in Time.
Somewhere in Time, and Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. I think it was 88 and 89.
Yeah, Seventh Son was there. Yep, Seventh Son was RPI, and then they moved over to the arena.
Right.
I saw him every time since Peace of Mind, which Glens Falls. It was a few times at Glens Falls, and then they moved over to RPI, and then eventually to the arena.
But yeah, you're right. You kind of we're very privileged to know the set list in advance and be able to watch it. But very rarely do you get to go back and see a concert like that again, like the actual literal concert from start to finish.
You know what's funny as hell is I just did my last actual tour in Overkill was this past South American tour that we just did at the top of the year. And David Ellefson, who used to be in Megadeth, was filling in for Dee Dee on bass because Dee Dee still has a shoulder issue he's dealing with a rotator cuff surgery. So while we were on this tour, I was talking. I've been friends with David Ellefson for like 20 years now. I knew him. I met him first when he was out of Megadeth and he was just working for PV Electronics when we were endorsed with them with Shadows Fall. And then eventually he got back at Megadeth. We did clinic tour together and we, played on recordings together. So we have a friendship and a chemistry just before we were even, doing this tour together. And we're on this tour, and I started like, tell me some more stories. Tell me some more stories about bad, and tell me some more about stories about this tour, because it just happened to be Overkill was their opening act on that tour. So I was in the hotel room one night after we were talking about, because I said to David, I said, correct me if I'm wrong. I said, didn't you guys play Mary Jane on that tour too before that song was even out? Wasn't Poland playing that? He goes, yes, we were. And I go, I knew it. I remembered that. And it was like, that was one of those things that I was so certain I remembered as a kid. But let me ask the guy who was actually there, because this is going to confirm or deny. So then that night I'm in the hotel room, sitting in my hotel room on YouTube like usual, just, whatever, lobby calls at 10 in the morning. And I'm going through, I just type in Megadeth, Colony Coliseum, 1987. Full show comes up. I text it over to him. He's in the room, 2 rooms away. I go, well, here's that show.
We're gonna play a brand fucking new song for you all tonight. Never heard anywheres but Albany, New York. David Ellison used to, where she was buried. Her tombstone says, beware, my friends, as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare, my friends, to follow me. Mary Jane Twilliger.
So it's funny when you go back and you can see what you see now with your eyes now, and you're like, wow, what was that? How I remembered it? Or when you see how crazy that shit was, you're like, holy shit, I could have got kicked in the head at any given moment during that whole 90 minutes there.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Like, when you go back and watch that video, do you ever go like, man, I actually don't remember it playing out like that, or I remember something differently happening. Oh, I didn't remember them playing that song. I remember them playing a different song. But it seems like, with the passage of time,
Yeah.
your brain fills in the gaps of what you want to remember.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And and by the way, that's killer to have that Megadeth show from Colony Coliseum, of that era, especially with Chris Poland.
Well, the story, this is one of those moments when I have to take a step back and pinch myself and go, holy shit, this is actually my life that I'm living and not someone else's. Like, this shit, all of this stuff fucking happened. The 2 days in May of 1987 that were very, very important in my life were the Thursday and Friday night. Thursday night was Megadeth, Overkill, and Necros at the Colony Coliseum. And the following Friday night, the next fucking night, was Anthrax on the Among the Living tour with Metal Church as the opening act. Now, both of these shows, I was going to see the opening band over the headliner. I liked Megadeth, but I loved Overkill. I was going to see Overkill first. I fucking was in love with the first Metal Church record, and Metal Church had just released The Dark, and they were opening for Anthrax. I had heard of Anthrax, but had not heard them yet. And all my friend kept telling me was, dude, if you think the fucking guy in Slayer's fast, wait till you hear the drummer in this band. And I was like, no fucking way. And then, like, as soon as they opened with Among the Living, my jaw was on the ground. I was just like, what the proverbial fuck? So what I said to Ellison when we were on a plane ride together one day, I said, if you fucking went back and told me in 1987 that one day, let's look at these two shows. One day I'd be in Overkill playing with the bass player from Megadeth in Overkill on tour. Oh, by the way, the next night, yeah, he also went on to be Charlie Benante's understudy for 6 months for a period of time as well. I would have never believed any of that. But crazier shit has happened.
Yeah, for sure. You've had like a incredible career, and you've played around the world. People know you obviously from Shadows Fall, but like you're just saying, you've played with all these different bands. You've filled in for some legendary drummers whose proverbial shoes are gigantic. And
it hasn't, and it wasn't like I planned on. I just read this. I read this the other day because, of course, they say don't read the comments on the internet.
Yep.
But I'm going to tell you, when you are a professional musician, and even when you're not a professional musician, even just when you're a musician, you're still going to read those comments because you want to see, doesn't matter if there's 99.5 good ones, it's the 0.5 bad one you're going to remember. So, of course, the one that I remembered from the other day, there was something on Blabbermouth, there was something about Overkill talking about, they kind of knew the end was coming with me. And I'd always been transparent and what my plans were. Like, once Shadows Fall started playing again, and once Category 7 was a entity, I never was closed off and said, oh, no. I was very transparent with, this is my Shadows Fall is my fucking band. I mean, this is my baby. You guys understand this. Category 7 is too. Like, if things start to come to a head, something's going to happen. So I was always transparent with all of that. But there was a Blabbermouth article, and someone mentioned a comment of, oh, well, all this guy is he's just looking to see what band he can play with next so he can climb up the ladder one more rung and put another name on his resume. That's not it at all. Like, I never in the world planned on going, well, you may know me from such bands as blah, 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 blah. I filled in for this guy, and I played in this one, and I played all the bands that I've played with. Am I proud that I played with them? Absolutely. But it was impossible for me to only be known as Jason Bittner, the drummer from Shadows Fall. After 2013, that band didn't exist anymore as a full-time band. I had no other choice but to then go back to almost square one again, get back in a van with a band and try to, and each thing was something better than where I was prior. It's hard for people to be, just so-and-so from so-and-so for that long. Only some bands are lucky to have that longevity.
Anyway. And I'll say, you have always been to me Jason Bittner from Shadows Fall, like mainly because I got
most people too.
Yeah, it was basically
still refer to me as Jason Bittner from Stigmata or Birmingham. Sure. I'm fine with that. The local thing is always going to be, I wear that right on my sleeve, so that's fine. And the majority of people, if you ask, have you ever heard of me? What bands he play? Shadows Fall. Oh, I might have heard of that band. So that is where the name recognition normally does come from.
I was just simply going to say, when when I started getting into metal, probably when I was 15 or 16, when I got to college, that was when I really got exposed to a lot more bands. One, because I had access to the internet and you could explore a lot more music. But with you guys, I remember getting The War Within. I remember 2004 getting The War Within, like the hype, getting it. I remember listening into my dorm room and just being like, "This is amazing!" Yeah, just killer.
I'm looking around my studio because I was trying to locate it because I'm trying to put up all the CDs I've been on in my entire career, and I'm up to year 2009. I still got 10 more to put up. I'm like, All right. Well, I thought that was gonna be all on that one wall, but I guess we're moving to another wall.
Well, you've played on some banging records, but I've just Shadows Fall's just always been my jam.
And 20 years ago, we put on a record called The War Within. So this is a fucking party, my friends. An anniversary party. So act accordingly. Say hello to Instagram Live. Everybody say hello. This is how fucking New Jersey represents. Yeah.
When did you first hear Metallica, and had you seen them before that '89 show in Troy?
Okay. The first time I heard Metallica was it's got to be 85, I think. Yeah, 85, 84, 85. Well, I think 85 because I was in my freshman. I can tell you what I can tell you is I had Master of Puppets in my sophomore year because I remember the night that it came out because I was working at McDonald's and my friends were at the mall and they came into McDonald's and they're like, oh, had their Record Town bags and I'm like, yo, here's $8. Someone go buy this shit for me because I'm not gonna be able to get it. It's gonna be closed when I get out of work. And all I remember was going home and just listening to Master of Puppets like at 10 o'clock at night, knowing that I had to get up, it's 5 the next day to deliver papers. I'm like, I'm listening to this shit from start to finish. And I was just like, holy shit. So I want to say the first time I heard him was probably 85 because I was still, obviously still major in the Rush phase in the Rush part of my life, which I probably never left. But that's when I was pretty much just immersed in Rush and the Police, and it was starting to become Maiden and Priest. And Metallica is the first of the real, well, we call them now. Metallica was the first of the big four bands that I heard. First thrash band I heard. And a kid that I knew in high school gave me Ride the Lightning to bring home and check out. It was Ride the Lightning, the LP. So I couldn't do my usual, I'll check this out on my paper route, thing. Right. So I literally brought it home that night, taped it onto a cassette so I can listen to it the next day. And I didn't even listen to it while I was recording it because I was like doing my homework or something. So I just taped it, I'll listen to it in the morning. So I put it in my tape player and it starts with Fight Fire with Fire. And I'm like, what the hell is this?
Here's Metallica playing Fight Fire with Fire at the Metal Hammer Festival in 1985.
Like it just sounded so like I never heard anything like that fast and like fucking like just nasty and I'm like and it sounded like utter dog shit to me at first. I'm like, what the hell's name is this? So oddly, I make it through the whole record, and the only song that I thought was like worth the shit was Escape because it was the only one that had like the structure and like vocals and shit. Like I just told you, I'm coming off just like being like Maiden and Priest. Like,
that actually makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
To like two guys who can really sing to what is this? So I give the album back to my friend and he's like, what'd you think, man? I'm like, I think that's terrible. and like and I didn't think anything else of it, man. I'll tell you, like a week later, I'm fucking walking around, I was doing my paper out one day, and I'm going, what the fuck am I singing? I'm like, oh my God, that's that goddamn Metallica song. And I was like, I'm in Fight Fire with Fire. And I was like, what the fuck? So that started a very pivotal part in music for me, because this happened with not only some of my favorite bands that I've liked as bands, but it's also happened in some of the bands I've actually been a member of where I thought they were terrible when I first heard them. Stigmata thought they were terrible. Shadows Fall thought they were terrible too. But there were certain elements of why I thought they were terrible. With Stigmata, I thought the drumming was fucking horrendous. This guy can't play in time. If you can't play in time, you're not doing your job as a drummer. Shadows Fall, bad drummer, bad singer. They got rid of the bad singer, thankfully. I mean, no offense, Phil. This is before Phil was able to sing, but years ago, he was a bad singer. And that first demo I got, Scott Lee gave it to me because Stigmata opened up for me. He goes, these guys are going to be big. Who's this, Shadows Fall? I'll be the judge of that. So put in my CD player. Bad drummer, bad singer. Boom. Fucking. So my point being is that some of the things that I thought were terrible when I first heard ended up being some of my most favorite, cherished things in the world. Slayer, I thought that was the worst thing. I thought Metallica was bad. I'm like, holy shit, Metallica's a Grammy-winning band, even before they were, compared to this shit. And Slayer was, and you ask anybody who knows me, my all-time favorite heavy metal band. So it's weird. So it was Metallica first. And then, I think it pretty much was just solely Metallica for a while. And because I heard the underground bands first. I heard the Metal Churches and the Annihilators and the Overkills and Flotsam and Jetsam before I heard Megadeth and Slayer and Anthrax. Anthrax was the last one for me to get into. I got into, I remember the trajectory of Megadeth. That's right. Because I was already a fan of Metallica. And by then I had switched high schools because I had gotten kicked out of Linton. Well, I didn't get kicked out. I was told I couldn't come back because my mother had moved. We moved up the street into Niskayuna, so now I was out of the school district. So it wasn't my senior year. So I was like, you got to pay or you got to go to Niskayuna High School. Fuck, great! I get to go to school with all the deadheads. Awesome. Me and my two metalhead friends that stuck out like sore thumbs there. So I remember going there and meeting a kid who, like I said, was like the one, we had the picnic table full of 5 metalheads that the whole school had. And he was really into this band Megadeth. And he was like, oh, if you like Metallica, you're going to like this band Megadeth. The guy who formed this band used to be in Metallica. Okay, cool. But he only had Killing Is My Business. And I'm like, this is fucking terrible. And then Peace Sells came out. I'm like, all right, this is good. Like, production wise and what. Now I go back. I love the first album.
Killing Is My Business is an amazing record. Absolutely.
Right. But at that time, like, again, Rush fan, Maiden, Priest, production, hearing shit like that. And then I got into Slayer. My friend let me borrow Show No Mercy. And I, again, I think actually, you know what? Anthrax is the only band out of the big 4 bands that I didn't think sucked when I first heard them. They were the only band. I was like, oh, these guys fucking kick ass. You know why? Because they were a great thrash band and they had a great singer. So there was nothing for me to go, oh. Anyway, so yeah, it was Metallica first, then Megadeth, then Slayer, then Anthrax. But I never answered the part of your question. I'm sorry, because you asked me if I had seen Metallica prior to the RPI show, and yes, I did. I was lucky enough to see them with Cliff on Master of Puppets at Glens Falls.
Wow!
Open for Ozzy, and I met Lars that night too.
Oh, that's cool as hell.
The show was over. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was fucking snowing out, and my friends and I were walking over the bridge because years ago, when you used to go to Glens Falls for a show, your parents would pick you up either at the Burger King that's next to the Glens Falls or at the McDonald's that was over the bridge. We were getting picked up over the bridge at the McDonald's. Me and my 2 friends are walking out. My 2 friends are just like fucking talking, and they're not paying attention because they're probably talking. They're both guitar players. Jakey Lee, Ozzy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, there's Lars Ulrich. And I fucking just took off. I sprinted over the bridge because I saw Lars standing in front of the Metallica bus talking to kids waiting at the red light. And my friends were, what? Wait, what? And I was gone. I ran down I got close enough just as he was leaving, like, Lars, great show, man. Like, hey, nice to meet you. Shook his hand. And both my friends, like, literally, the bus door shut. I turn around. My friends were like, what the fuck? I'm like, you weren't paying attention, man. It's like, how did you see him? I'm like, drummer vision. So, and then I had tickets to see them again at the Skyway in Scotia. They were supposed to headline with Armored Saint, and we all know what happened.
Wow.
They never made it back over here after the European tour with Anthrax, sadly.
Where was the Skyway in Scotia?
Skyway was in Scotia. It was on oh God, it's on 50. It's you know, are you familiar with Scotia at all? Scotia, do you know where Regulars Liquor is?
Vaguely. It's been a bit since I've been in Scotia.
If you're going up 50 towards Saratoga, right? There's a little there's a Getty Mart, and there's a turn for Sacandaga Road, and there's Regulars Liquors, and there's this barn building that was an antique store, and it also was open as Old Allen's not too long ago as a club, like in the early 2000s. That's where the Skyway was.
Okay. There's just so many former venues like JB Scott's, in Albany.
JB Scott's was the old, became the old Albany Drome Sound.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
Which is now, I think, a hair supply place.
Yeah. Yep. Things changing. Thin Lizzy played there, and U2 played there, and there was a whole bunch of. But Thin Lizzy, one of my favorite bands.
Lotto and the Police played there.
Oh, did they? Okay. Yeah. There's some good archived stuff on the web from that era of JB Scott's. Yep. But yeah, there's a lot of music memories, and you just there's fewer and fewer.
A little band
venues.
from Ireland played there too.
Oh, U2 played there, right?
We played fucking JB Scott's.
Isn't that funny? This is U2 performing I Will Follow at JB Scott's in 1981.
I push on the inside, and I try hard to understand. I keep on pulling, shoving, pushing.
I know there's a recording of the Thin Lizzy tour, and that was for the Chinatown album. And the recording is like okay, and you can clearly tell they're all strung out on heroin. But it's still fun. It's still fun to listen to.
I'm going to say something that's probably not very. I would kill to see a rock band strung out on heroin nowadays. Everybody's too damn PC and fucking pussyfied.
It would certainly make for an interesting show.
It certainly would. Well, you do have Perry Farrell going after Dave Navarro, so that's pretty good.
That's the clip of the week or clip of the month, I think. That is
definitely the clip of the month. And what's even more hysterical about that is that was the fucking show that I was going to buy tickets and go to. And I was on the fence because the last time we went to see Jane's Addiction, they were good, but Perry's voice was still like, it was just starting to be like, eh. And I know now it's, and you can tell by that video that it's holy shit, because he just opens his mouth and it just goes, and nothing comes out, which I feel terrible. But like, yo, man, in the day and age of this, You don't attack your guitar player on stage because everybody's going to film it.
I know. In perpetuity, people will remember that moment, and because it's been recorded.
I mean, none of this shit never happened to Axl Rose, man.
Though people did riot when he didn't show up.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, so after the Metallica show ends, was it kind of, you were just talking about like the Glens Falls show ends, you know, you're walking, your parents are picking you up. What did you do after the show? Was there any like something you did together? Did you just head home?
After that show, after the RPI show, I have no idea. My guess is we were all 19. We probably went back to my friend's house and smoked weed. Because they had the crash pad that was, you know, locally by everybody else's house. That's probably my guess, because we were still too young to go to bars then. And there was no after thing at Winners as far as I remember, or either that or we didn't know about it, but
I want to give a huge thank you to Jason for taking time out of his incredibly busy schedule to share his memories of attending Metallica's first and only concert in Troy, New York. Don't forget to check out the latest releases from Shadows Fall in Category 7, double horns up for both. This isn't the last time you'll hear from Jason. We'll be diving into Slayer's 1991 show at the Field House during the band's Touring in the Abyss run, where Jason met metal drumming legend Dave Lombardo for the very first time. We also have several additional episodes on the Metallica show, including with Eric Haskins, RPI alumni, and WRPI's DJ Toast, who was on security detail that night, and Kevin O'Connell, who was a 14-year-old fan in the audience. Until next time, love yourself, love one another, and may Pod save Troy. Oh, and stay metal. Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City, is hosted, written, edited, and produced by me, John Salka. Our theme music is by Stephen J. Goldman at Four Legs Records. Like what you heard? Please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City. This is incredibly helpful for getting others to find our show. Want to know more? Visit TroyStoryPod.com to see upcoming episodes, guests, and bonus content. Thanks for listening. The views or opinions expressed by guests are their own and not of the host or Troy Story, a podcast for the Collar City.
Adrenaline starts to flow, rushing all around, acting like a maniac.
We'll see you around, man. Sometime soon, I hope. Thank you. See ya.